Hey, welcome to Next Level Method Podcast. I'm Richard Ryerson.
And I'm Matt Lilly.
And we're here to help you take your life to the next level. Let's get started. Jessica Cox on the show. You know, we tried to shoot this a couple times, and I'm glad you waited for me to do this because I was so excited to have her on the show. Not born with any arms.
Yep.
Right. Used prosthetic arms all the way till she was...
I think 14.
14.
I think
I said 11.
Right. But I think it was 14. Yep.
But one day she decided, you know what? I'm just going to use these things anymore.
Right.
And she's just led this amazing life.
Amazing.
She does everything with her feet. First person ever to get qualified with a sport certificate flying planes soloed with her feet only.
Right. We didn't even get into the show. She's a black belt in Taekwondo. She's a scuba diver. And in the exit after we shot the show, we asked her what she loves to do, like to increase her energy, and she's an outdoor cyclist. Just rode some ridiculous 40 mile thing. Right, exactly. So,
she's an amazing woman.
Amazing woman, and just love her heart, love her soul, love that she's just inspiring people. Obviously, through the interview, you'll understand that she's really inspiring people that have disabilities. But as we talked about in the interview, really it's as inspiring, if maybe even more inspiring, for people that aren't born with physical disabilities, because it really makes us think about what we can do if we don't limit ourselves. Right.
Right, and that's kind of the point of what kind of the epiphany for her was that, as a society, we kind of forced her into wearing prosthetics, thinking that this was the normal way.
Right.
And her whole point was, without the prosthetics,
she can go faster.
I can go faster, farther, do more things, and it just speaks to the power of the mind, of the tenacity of the human spirit, the creativity of the human being.
Yep.
I mean, everything is just. I mean, she's just.
I think you and I can easily say that we're fans of Jessica Cox.
I'm her number one fan. And you can tell because we're asking tons of questions and probably speaking more than she did. But we're just so curious and amazed by her. And you're just going to love this conversation with Jessica.
So she's got the book. So I think listen to her podcast, but then go watch the documentary.
Yeah, the documentary is Right-Footed.
Go watch the documentary.
Spend the $4 to watch it. I was totally moved by it. And you're going to love this conversation. Go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more. Follow us on your favorite podcast application. We really do appreciate your support. If you're finding value in the show, please take the time to rate us and review us. It would mean the world to us. And again, check out nextlevelmethod.com to learn more. So let's get on with this great conversation with the one and only Jessica Cox here on Next Level Method. Well, Jessica, so excited to meet you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, we got to be careful. This could turn into an hour of geeking out on nothing but aviation if we're not careful, Jessica, because of these non-flying types.
I was going to say, I will keep you on. I'll pull us back. I'll pull us back.
So I'll try not to geek out too much on the flying thing, but it's such a big part of your story. I mean, my gosh, when I saw as a pilot myself, here's someone that can fly with no arms. I'm like, how is that even possible? And then I watch you do it. I still don't know how it's even possible. So just an amazing story. Your documentary was just so inspiring and so amazing. And so I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Excited to talk to another pilot as well and share some flying adventures.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't even know that plane, just if I can get the geek out of the way, I didn't even know of all the years flying this. Is it air coupe? Is that how you pronounce it? How do you pronounce that plane? I didn't even know.
Yeah, I've been pronouncing it wrong all these years. I know you want to say air coupe, but it's actually coupe.
Is it really?
Proper pronunciation. Yeah, it's ERCO, ERCO. Back in the 40s, they're the ones who manufactured this particular airplane, which is the only airplane without rudder pedals, meaning 2 less controls than average.
Yeah, and I guess kind of their advertisement thing was like this plane can't be spun, right? That was my big thing, is like, oh my God, she needs her feet for these rudder pedals if something happens. But I didn't even know that plane existed. So that just tells me of all the years of flying, I didn't even know.
Right, that you're not quite as smart as you thought.
Quite as smart as I do.
I think you're still smarter than me, but you're just not quite as smart. You're not as smart as Jessica. Yeah. But let's do a little background because I think I want to get more into the flying, because there's some stuff, I think, some cool connections there. But so tell us a little bit about you, and kind of for people who don't know who you are, and kind of your very inspiring, unique story, which I love, because I've watched some videos and read some stuff, and so I'm very up to it, and so is up to speed, and so is Richard. But for the viewers and the listeners, kind of what's your background?
Well, just to give everyone kind of a, 30-second bio, I mean, I was born without arms, lived my whole life from the beginning this way, using my feet as my hands. I had prosthetics for 11 years, so the prosthetic limbs, I never made the connection, but moved forward with using my feet as my hands and have done some pretty incredible things along the way, from scuba diving, surfing, and probably most recognized as the world's first armless pilot.
Yeah.
And just in your spare time, you're a black belt in Taekwondo. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, how could I forget?
So
class last night.
There's that, and you can do that over a weekend. That's a weekend course now. Just a black belt in Taekwondo. So
they hand out black belts like
all the time, right? Yeah. So yeah, just an amazing, and from your story and some of the stuff I've followed, it was just amazing to me that I think as a person who hasn't experienced that, I would think, oh, good, I get the prosthetics, and from your standpoint, they were actually, that was the disability, was trying to use the prosthetics, if that's accurate. So basically it was had the reverse effect on you, where it was like when you had them on, you felt like that was that was a challenge versus just not being. I mean, I remember hearing you say, I think in one of your videos, that it was like the day you decided to not wear them anymore was freedom.
Yeah, that was the prominent in the documentary. Like when you decided, like going, was it middle school, and the first day it's like, I'm not wearing this, I'm not going, and you never looked back, right?
Yes, I think that's what it is. It's the pressure to conform is more of the disability, because of the fact that I came out different, but because I wasn't necessarily like everyone else, these prosthetic arms were pushed on me, feeling like I needed to have them as an option to be like everyone else, instead of celebrating that my body naturally adapted. Just like you see toddlers and babies, they have the ability to adapt, to use what they have. And to be able to highlight that and celebrate that instead, it was almost about making sure that I had this option, which, I don't resent the fact that I had the option of prosthetics, because there are some people born without limbs who always wonder and may not even have that opportunity. But I think those 11 years could have been spent doing other things, instead of just really trying hard the basics, how to write with them, how to eat with them, how to function with prosthetics, which again is completely different than flesh and bone, because I couldn't feel whether something was rough or smooth or hot or cold. I lost that sensation, and the tactile ability of my toes and my flesh and bones are really much better than using something that I had to actually think through how to use it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's amazing. I mean, just what you're saying is just amazing to me, because I think, as I've, again, looked at your stuff and watched some of your videos, it's just like, it helps me get a lot better perspective on the adaptability, but just basically, I think I limit myself. Yeah. Right? I limit myself, and I'm probably not as creative as I should be or could be. And
yeah, I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's like
it's like, it is eye-opening to think. We think like, oh, how unfortunate. Right, let's try to make it. We're trying to conform, all with good intentions, but actually the best thing to do was not conform. Right, the human body, and it speaks to the power of the mind, and the ability to adapt is way more powerful than trying to conform to something that's what we consider normal. Right. Does that make sense? Yeah. Basically, and it's like, well, and we talked about we talk about this to some degree, but it's kind of like following the herd. It's like how much does being born like with the arms and the legs, how much of that is a disability because it's too easy to conform to the world, right? Because in your situation, you were able to be creative because of the way you were born, but your mind was creative in a whole nother way that mine isn't creative, or I have to really be purposeful with that creativity. And I love being creative. I mean, that's I geek out on being creative, but still, it's easy for me just to go back and conform and do the things that everybody else is doing because that's what society is doing. Versus, we talk about socially defined versus self-authorship. This is really that self-authorship piece where it's like you defined your life based on your terms and you're engaging in life based on your terms. And I just love that. I mean, for me, that's just so inspiring that's why I wanted to have you on the show. Because actually the reason
I ran into you is the pastor at our church had mentioned your story as part of his sermon about overcoming and just that whole piece of kind of defining your own life. And I was like, immediately I was watching it remotely, and I just text our lady who sets these up, and I was our director of education. I was like, we got to have her on the show. I just want to know, right? I want to know more about that. And so you inspired me just because of your ability to, I won't even say adapt, just live your life, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm trying to put. I'm probably putting words. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth.
It's fine. It's just kind of like explaining to people that this is my norm, and I don't know any different from what I was born with. And yes, I did have to build some of these creativity skills out of necessity for survival, and it tapped my creativity. It tapped me to be more persistent and resilient. But later in life, those skill sets that I had to develop at an earlier age became my greatest gifts as an adult, pursuing things and setting out to do things even today that I do, something that has become so normal for me. For others, it may be more challenging to persist through an obstacle, but because I had to develop that as a young person, it makes it easier now to be a part of my everyday life.
Yeah, exactly. Because you built that persistent muscle, right? You know know that you have to be persistent to get the result you want. So now, if you have something you want, you lean in instead of leaning out, I guess.
Well,
right?
It speaks to the power of tenacity, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it's less always about the talent. It's always about the never giving up and the tenacity. I mean, it's just the case. I mean, watching you put a contact lens in with your toe, I mean, I would think that's just impossible. But you're showing the power of creativity, the human mind, and tenacity and persistence, right? I mean,
Richard was trying to demonstrate it before you came on. He was lifting. He was like, he only got his foot about, he could only get about 2 foot away from his, he only got it to about 2 foot away from his eye. He's like, I can't even get my toe to my eye.
Because I was explaining to him, to me, that was the most amazing thing about watching you do that in that video. I'm like, what? And my wife was like, what? Because I can't even put into contact.
Barely put into contact with 2 hands.
Jeez.
Oh.
So, but going back to what you said there, Jessica, about the day that you just said you basically you're 11 years old and you make this courageous choice to not wear the prosthetics. Had you not really so at that point, I'm assuming you couldn't do a lot of the things that you can do now. Like, could you brush your teeth with your feet at that point? Could you do some of the things that are so normal now? Like you said, you lost 11 years maybe because we were trying to conform. I mean, how much of the learning curve happened from 11 on?
I like that you're asking for that clarification because people wonder that all the time. And I actually knew from the beginning and all along how to use my feet. But I felt like I had to also learn the prosthetics way and how to open the hook, which was served as the hand, how to learn how to move the elbow, and to be a part of my everyday. So it was essentially like learning to do it multiple ways. And it was frustrating though, because it took actually more time, more energy
to do
it that way than the natural way, which for me is the way I adapted my whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to lean into your plane nerdiness.
Oh, good.
I'm ready to go there now. So what on earth made you want to fly a plane?
Well, like everything else that has ever happened, I think for me, it just came at the right time and place when the opportunity just came across my path. I didn't have any pilots in my family. None of my friends were pilots, but I was just graduated college. I was ready to start my profession, and I decided I wanted to become a motivational speaker. And I needed something to show the world that you shouldn't let fear stand in the way of an opportunity. And here was an opportunity staring me straight in the face as this opportunity of flying in a Cessna airplane came about just after I gave a keynote speech. And I was like, I don't know if this is for me. It was initially, I was honestly a little hesitant to start something like this because I was afraid of losing contact with the ground. And it wasn't the fear of heights. I loved heights. I loved climbing places and being up high and looking down. But the fear of losing contact with the ground was something that had been with me my whole life. And airplanes, the moment you take off, I always felt that fear and the nervousness of being airborne. And so I think that when the person who came up to me, he was a fighter pilot, and he had a nonprofit called Right Flight that helps use aviation to inspire young people. And he said if I could aspire to a certain goal, he would gift me with this joyride flight in a Cessna. And I'd never been in a small airplane my whole life. And I said, well, I guess this is the next thing. I just graduated college. My dad was with me at the time, and he answered for me. He said she would love to do that. And so it started this path to going up on my first flight as a student pilot and figuring out this is going to be what I want to do next. I want to continue, not just a few flights, not just a joyride. I want to pursue my sport pilot certificate, or at the time, it was going to be a private pilot certificate, a private pilot's license, and do whatever it takes to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he even let you. I can't remember. I don't know if the footage that they showed in the documentary was that actual Cessna flight. I kind of remember you talking about that. I don't know, but he gave you the controls too, right? And then he kind of let you kind of goof around with it up at altitude and stuff, right? And that kind of gave you the bug. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. He said, would you like to put your foot on the yoke? Because I was sitting on the, for people who aren't familiar, they're dual controls.
On the right side,
so you can fly it from the other seat as well. And I had my foot up there on the yoke. And he said, my hands are off and you're flying the plane. It was that moment I caught the bug.
Yeah.
As many of us pilots do. And it's like, wow, this is something I want to continue to do.
And then how long did it take to find, what was his name, Parish? What was his name? The guy that...
Parrish.
Because how did that happen? How did you find a guy that was willing to teach you to fly in this plane? Not the Cessna, the Ercoupe.
Oh, the Ercoupe, yes. What people don't... Well, the Ercoupe was down, it was 2 years later.
Oh, okay.
Because we didn't even know there was an airplane out there. Kind of like you, Richard. You didn't know about the Ercoupe, but the fact there's this plane out there with 2 less controls.
So finding that plane was kind of... You said, oh, okay, I've got the bug. I got to figure this out. And that kind of led to try to find...
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
That's what kind of started that whole process. And it was really like the instruction part, to be honest, and many people will vouch for this. The aviation community is incredibly welcoming. Mm-hmm. And the way in which, if you want to be one of another pilot, or if you want to pursue something, there's this incredible amount of support. It's almost like a family. Pilots are like a family, and I didn't have any resistance. There were so many people that were wanting to help and be a part of this. So when it came to an instructor, I didn't have an issue. It was really about figuring out the process of flying with my feet with my instructor, and I had multiple instructors, in fact.
Yeah, he was I remember they were talking to him, and he was just like, yeah, once he met you, he was like, yes, I want to figure this out with her, right? And so that was really cool. I can't imagine, though, they show the video in the documentary of her solo flight, and I used to instruct in the military, too, and we used to sign guys off and gals off to solo. And it was very nerve-wracking to watch, to walk, okay, here you go. And you get out and you let them go and watch them do it. And he's sitting there watching you as you come in, and you're coming in a little too short, and you do the go around. He's like, oh, that was a good decision. I was like, holy, I just can't imagine. He must have been so brave and courageous to watch you doing that down there, and so excited. It was so fun to watch you when you soloed and you got out of the plane, and your smile on your face was so big. I mean, what an amazing moment, right?
It's nothing like that moment when you flew that plane by yourself for the first time. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that we capture in this for non-pilots, because I do love to fly, but for non-pilots, one, I heard you say that you were afraid, not necessarily to fly, but to leave the ground physically. So there was fear in this process. It wasn't like you went, yay, let's learn to fly a plane, right? And we had another guest on, Patrick Sweeney. We had another guest on, and he was terrified to fly, but it was kind of the same deal. He went up, it took him 4 or 5 times in a plane to finally get the bug. But you overcame a fear, and then that persistence kicked in. So this isn't just about flying. It's also about, and we've talked about it in some other shows, that on the other side of that fear I guess I've heard it said, if you say you can't, then you must, right? I've heard that from Tony Robbins. If somebody comes, if you say, well, I can't do that, then guess what? Now you got to do it. So for me, it was jumping off a telephone pole because I was scared of heights. For you, it was, flying a plane because you were kind of afraid to do that. And then you had to figure it out. So I think that again goes back to that overcoming fear and that the resilience and the human spirit that once you get to the other side of it, what was the feeling, I guess? What was the sense once you actually got your pilot's license? What was that like?
And just to clarify too, it's pilot certificate because I went the sport pilot route. Right. And once I got it, it was like I was on top of the world. Like I could do anything.
Right.
Because it was something that I worked harder for my pilot certificate than anything I can think of actually. Other than my own confidence of my own difference. But that achievement, I worked so incredibly hard for it. And when you work that hard, you have to persevere. And it makes the accomplishment all the more meaningful when you do it. And it really makes you feel like you can do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine.
I love that.
It seemed like this is a technical question, but when you're sitting there, it seems like because of what you have to do with your legs and your feet for the controls and the throttle, that you're sitting way too low, like your visibility isn't all that great. Maybe that's just from my perspective. But when I was watching you sit there, I was like, how can she see outside? So I'm curious about that.
Yes, that was always another obstacle we had to overcome because I'm having to have my feet up. And for reference, the Ercoupe doesn't have seats that can just slide back like you can in a car or maybe other airplanes like a Cessna. So they're locked in. It's a locked-in bench seat for myself and whoever's sitting beside me. And so I didn't have that ability to scoot it back. So I was working with the space that I had. Luckily, I'm pretty petite. I'm 5'1". So my legs are shorter. And I had to, first of all, elevate myself on a seat cushion.
Yeah.
And the seat cushion gave me the visibility I needed, but then it had to be a certain balance of I couldn't sit too high up because if I was too high up, then I couldn't reach the throttle with my left foot. And so if I sat too low, then I wouldn't be able to see. So it was like we had to strike this balance of safety and making sure my visibility was good and making, doing different things. For example, with landing, we had to give me a little more airspeed than the average student pilot, meaning my instructor gave me the permission to fly and land a little faster than he would normally allow a student to give me more room for error. And so there's these little things along the way we had to make work with the situation because we had this airplane and only this airplane. And we were not customizing it in any way. There wasn't anything specially done to the plane. It was just a standard Ercoupe.
Interesting. That is just it's amazing. And what also goes through my mind is doing the simulated emergencies or the malfunctions, the abnormalities. I mean, how I don't know what the steps are in those planes, but obviously the one losing an engine on takeoff or losing an engine at altitude, all those things that you have to do there. I'm sure there's certain things that you have to do. And I don't even know how do you break out a checklist? How do you do all these things and run through these emergency procedures with just your...
Yeah, another thing, the whole checklist thing actually posed a challenge for me because my feet are pretty busy on the controls.
Exactly.
And now we're adding another element, pulling out a checklist or pulling out a chart because this is standard 1940s airplane, there's nothing really... Right. So I had to use charts and all this stuff. And so flipping through all that was complicated in the airplane alone, especially during like my solo cross country flight. Oh so one of those other things I did was I wore like a clipboard around my neck so that I could actually have it as reference. And if I didn't need it, I could just sit up tall and make sure that clipboard went away. And there's these little things I had to do just to kind of come up with creative solutions to those necessities when you're flying.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I can feel it over there. Cessnas are made here in Wichita, Kansas. So as most private airplanes are, and I know you were fairly close to Wichita. You were in Topeka not too long ago on one of your cross country tours, which is Topeka's about 2 to 2.5 hours from Wichita. But I'm just going to do an open invitation before I forget. So if you're ever in this part of the country again and you want to fly on something, between Richard and I, we know tons of people that have planes. So if there's any aircraft, any gear that you want to fly on or fly, we could probably help out with that. So I want to make an open invitation for you to come back to Wichita and hang out with us for the day or two. We'd be happy. I've got some friends who have biplanes. We've got all kinds of fun toys here in Wichita because they're built here.
That's right.
Stearman's. We're still Stearman's built here, or they just have a lot of them here?
I don't know.
The biplanes?
Yeah, they initially, during the war,
were built here.
I think
so.
So
There's a lot of biplanes that are here as well. But
Great.
why were you in? So tell us about, you were in Topeka, Kansas, not a month or two ago, or has this been longer?
It's been longer. It was the summer.
Okay.
So this every year in Oshkosh, Wisconsin is called Air Venture, the largest aviation gathering in the world, and it's it was one of those places you want to travel to. And we took the Ercoupe cross country, stopped in Topeka because there was a camp there called Mission Creek Camp, and it was a camp for adults with disabilities and children with disabilities. That particular week, it was for adults with disabilities, and we wanted to stop in, and I said hello to the campground, and then we did a little flyover, and they were so excited because they came out of the dining hall to see the Ercoupe above, and it was just a really nice stopover, and it worked out well with our cross country plan to stop in Topeka.
We talk about, I'm curious, building on that and kind of going back to your documentary where you showed you traveled to Ethiopia and all over those places over there. So what were some of the other places you went to? I know Ethiopia was one of them. That was the main one in the documentary, right?
Yes, that's correct. It was Ethiopia, the Philippines after the largest, the super typhoon.
Yeah, after the typhoon
the
hit.
strongest typhoon in history, and plus I have some connections to the Philippines as well as. So yeah, I think it was Ethiopia, the Philippines, Washington D.C., California, and Arizona.
I want to get into because it was to me, one of the most powerful parts of that documentary was watching kind of and there was definitely a lot of stuff going on in your mind. I kind of want to get into your mind about what was happening there, particularly when you go to these places and you see, we were talking about this before the conversation. I said the thing that really struck me was, it looked like, from my vantage point to you, that you just had this massive perspective shift, almost like it was jolting or jarring in the sense that, like, oh my gosh, you're seeing these families with these kids, and they're looking to you almost for, like, you know what I mean? And if I was you, I'd be like, I want to save all these people, right? And you're just sitting there, and it just, I don't know, I kind of want to get into your mindset. It just seemed like you just got slapped with this perspective shift of gratitude and sadness. And does that make sense?
And let's make sure we set this up, because I haven't watched the documentary yet. So why did you go to Ethiopia?
Sorry.
What were you doing there? Yeah, what were you doing there? And then let's get into what Richard was talking about.
Part of the trip to Ethiopia, actually, it was part of a documentary, and they were following when I went out there on behalf of Humanity and Inclusion, which is an NGO that helps serve people with disabilities, and they're a global NGO, and they actually have done a lot of incredible work. So they invited me to go out as a Goodwill ambassador, and I'd never been in Ethiopia, thinking. I didn't know what to expect. I was coming in, and they had a lot of things set up for me to help with their efforts for inclusive education. And that's because at the time, less than 3% of children with disabilities were given the opportunity to go to school.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really serious, a serious issue.
3%?
And they wanted, at the time, yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's because, like,
so I was coming in.
And it seemed like, no, I was just going to say, it just seemed like we were talking before the show, is like, even here, like there, it's almost like they're treated as almost like, in some of these communities and these cultures, like they're outcast. I mean, they're literally outcasts, right?
Well, there's a caste system probably there, right? But so yeah, please continue. What you went there as a Goodwill ambassador to, what was your mission, I guess?
And I was there to help with bringing awareness to inclusive education and how important it is to have accommodations and include children with disabilities in education. And we were visiting families, some where a child with a disability was literally kept hidden at home for, I think it was 14 years because of the stigma that exists around disability in the country. And I also saw some children who had so much potential. I mean, they were even like multilingual, and they were still under this stigma of disability and not given what they needed to be successful. And it was just a very unfortunate reality check for me, I think, to recognize that people with disabilities around the world are stigmatized and not given the same opportunities every single day. And I was fortunate to be born where I was born, and I was given everything, every protection to be included in education, to be included in employment, to be included in receiving health care and all that. So for me, it was like, how am I going to shift something that has been this longstanding stigma? And all I could do was share my story of becoming a pilot and show the potential that anyone with a disability can achieve.
Well, and that's what I was kind of getting at, because I was jarred by it. If you're just watching, just kind of you, and I could see it in your face. Is like, what, 'cause, a whole host of things had to be going through you. Like, what am I doing? What can I, because you wanted to do something, but what could you do, right? I don't know. Maybe I was reading too much into it, but it just seemed like if I was there, I would have been like, I want to take this kid with me because you can see it, right? And so it was sad, it was inspiring, it was everything, right? Am I hitting the nail on the head there? I mean, was that what was going through your head?
Yes, and there was a certain amount of powerlessness that was
that's the right
very
way to
evident.
Yeah, the powerlessness, that's what I was kind of getting at there. And that was, I felt it watching at home, just sitting there going like, there's got to be something we can do, right? And then you got to leave. And even like that girl, there's this, I can't remember if that was in Ethiopia or not, but the blind girl.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Okay, so tell us the story, somebody.
Yeah.
Jessica, you want to tell Jessica, you want to tell us the story?
Well, Richard seems very passionate about that. I'm sorry. Take some of that story.
Yeah, I mean, so Jessica meets her and she's blind, and she wasn't. Was she stuck at home, or was she allowed to go out, or was she? But she was such in a shell. I mean, from when I saw her, she was kind of really shy. And then when you sat down next to her and she got to feel your face and talking, and I guess there were translations going on, and she just really opened up, and she looked at you almost like as a sister, right? And she's like, kissed your face, and I'm like, oh my God. And then she came to the airport to see you off, and it was just like, it's just amazing.
Yeah. It just make me cry now.
I know. I mean,
now I've got to watch the documentary for sure. But you're going to make me cry on the show. I don't like to. But cry in front of people.
As a viewer, kind of watching, the powerlessness of a couple of the examples that you gave before meeting this girl in the show, and you're just like, the powerlessness, and then seeing that and just seeing how that spoke to me of your purpose and your power. Right? She can't even see you. She doesn't even know what a plane looks like. She doesn't even know what a plane is, probably. But just having that moment with her at that moment, and you were sitting there and you had that human connection with her for whatever reason, whatever you connected with her. And I thought that's the purpose of what and the power of what Jessica can do. Right?
Yes, it was a learning moment for me as well. So for someone who's blind, and to have these translators communicate to her that I was born without arms and that I use my feet, that's really hard to do without actually seeing. And it never occurred to me that I should let her feel as I was demonstrating how to do that. And like you were saying, Richard, that moment she started to feel my face and feel my foot as I was holding a popsicle between my toes, she understood in that moment, oh, that's how you do it. And I missed that part because up until the point that I finally allowed her to start to feel my face and feel my foot, she wasn't connecting. But then that was her form of understanding what was happening, and she just lit up, and it was just a very magical moment between us, and she understood.
Yeah, I love that. It was my favorite part of and then that she came there to see you off when you were leaving. And she almost referenced you as a sister. I can't. Did she say that as a sister? She said
she
something.
Did call me a sister.
Yeah, it was just amazing. anyway, but that speaks to I think for me, which got me out of this powerless phase. I'm living vicariously through. So sorry if I was.
But that's why that's why documentaries and things like that are so important, because it's obviously, I can feel your passion, I can sense your passion, but it inspired you, right?
Yeah, because it just showed us because I could just see the powerlessness. That's the great way to describe it, of what you were feeling. I felt it at home, and then like that interaction with that young girl. Just like that's your purpose, right? I mean, that can, if it was me, that would recenter me and think, okay, all I can do is just share my story, and that's what you did. You shared your story and showed her how you ate a popsicle, and that's the best you can do, right? I mean, that's your mission. That's why you're here.
It definitely did bring greater purpose for me, and understanding and knowing that I'm going to spend the rest of my life, whatever I can do to bring awareness to that internationally around the world, to places and to places of the world where people just can't understand, and they're just too stigmatized. But I'll work my whole life to do that, to change that.
Do you have any, when you leave, do you have any connections with them? Have you seen any improvement? You said, you alluded to that
the 3%.
3%. Has that improved because of kind of this awareness and efforts?
Well, when I was there, Humanity Inclusion had, I don't have the exact number, but they had done a number of programs in schools for accommodations. So it could be welcoming for students with disabilities. And that has significantly grown since. I know that they're continuing to do more work. They're in more schools. And I don't know what percentage shift that has happened since then. I mean, it's been now, 6-7 years. So but the work is being done. I mean, it's growing, it's continuing. It's a slow process to change stigma, but I think that once you start it and you continue to work on it, they're continuing to do this work around the world, and it has had some major growth in Ethiopia.
That's good. And Matt was telling me that you were working on maybe a customized airplane. Well,
that's where I kind of want to go next. So what are you currently working on? And then, I think from what I've seen, you're kind of raising funds to build a plane, right?
So we want to continue to get the word out there that disability doesn't mean inability, to travel, meet with children with disabilities, and to do more of the work here locally in the United States, like going to Topeka, Kansas, to camps like Mission Creek Camp, and to meet with a lot of parents who have children who are born missing limbs, as well as potentially take it internationally. And right now, the Ercoupe, which we've been talking about, is a 1946 airplane. It has limitations for what it can do and the span and the speed. It cruises at 90 miles per hour. But we want to build an airplane. We're calling this Project 2025, and it's an RV-10, which will cruise at 200 miles per hour. And we want to take this airplane and modify it custom controls to be the very first airplane that has been custom designed to be flown with feet.
Wow.
In the left pilot and command seat.
That's amazing.
That's the project.
And so where are you at in that process, and then kind of what's that mission look like? To your point, you want to use this to inspire, to travel more yourself and then inspire people. So I guess where are you at in the process with this plane?
Well, it was just launched this summer, and I don't know, for those who are not familiar with kit airplanes, they take a long time to build. They take like 2,000 hours to build this particular RV-10. And so we had to wait to order. We were donated. We were actually working with Vans Aircraft, and they are so incredible in supporting what we're trying to do. So we are planning to receive the RV-10 in the summer of next year. And then once we have that, there's the 2,000 hours to build it. And then in addition, the customization, which is going to require some engineering to design it to be flown with feet. And so then, of course, experimenting on what will work, what won't work. And it's called an experimental aircraft. So we have a long couple years ahead of us. But we hope that once it's finished, it will be the first ever of its kind.
Oh, that would be amazing.
And so do you have a crew that's going to assemble it there, or volunteers, or what? And because you're in Phoenix, is that accurate? Or Tucson?
I'm actually in Tucson, which is south of Phoenix.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
and we don't have we are taking volunteers who are interested in putting this together, like taking on the wing or the tail. We're hoping to reserve the fuselage so that we can make sure that the custom controls will be manageable. So we're going to try our best to keep that here very local to Tucson. But we are open to ideas. We want this to be a database too for other pilots with disabilities. So for perhaps if an idea comes our way that we cannot actually use or doesn't end up working out, we can keep it in our database available for other pilots with disabilities so that they can have the custom controls to have the freedom of flight as well.
Well,
amazing stuff.
It is amazing. The scuba diving stuff, since I'm not a big scuba diver, but I've tried to swim without my arms. That would be very frightening to me. I mean, I know in the documentary you show some swimming. You're trying to get that little girl to swim without arms. From scuba diving standpoint, how do you?
Well, I actually kind of understand that because typically, well, I'll let you answer.
I mean, I know your feet can get you to go up and stuff, but
you're not in scuba diving. Typically, you're not supposed to use your hands.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very much, because you're not, well, once you get in the water, I don't know, you'll have to explain how you do it with like the gear side of it, but once you're swimming, you're typically taught to tuck your arms because you don't want to be touching stuff. One, you're to disturb whatever you're swimming with, but you also don't want to, get bitten. Oh. so you're, to some degree, you're supposed to kind of keep yourself to yourself so you're not disturbing the environment. But I don't know how you get up and down. You obviously got to put on a mask and you got to get the gear on and you got to, the running that stuff's a whole nother element.
But just swimming in general just seems like it'd be frightening swimming without arms to me. And I was a lifeguard too, and I just that scares me.
One of the things, I don't have the weight of arms. And when you're weightless
Or
underwater. So it's interesting how like my backstroke, I could probably do a lot better than someone with arms because I don't have the arms in the way and it kind of like, no drag there. So in a way it can benefit for a backstroke. Some of the other ones though are a little harder to do, like a butterfly. But I'm sorry, it's the breaststroke. That's a little harder to do. But I love swimming. And the hardest thing when I was swimming, though, learning to swim as a kid was treading water. It exhausted me. Yes. It was like I was treading water and using all my energy, and then I was panicked that I was going to sink in the deep end.
Right.
And then finally I came to terms with the fact that if I just stay calm, it's a lot easier than being panicked and fearfully kicking to stay afloat.
Yeah, well, is it easy to, like when you just rest and relax, is it easy to, on your back, is it easy to maintain that balance? I mean, even front and back?
That's what I love about swimming, is that my back gets a really good workout because I use my legs so much, and using my feet and legs all the time can really contort my back in ways that will be... I have tension in my shoulders sometimes and my back. So swimming is very therapeutic for me, and I love it.
There's another kind of physical question. Is it any problems with like your hips and stuff like that and the flexibility of moving? I mean, you basically can you can comb your hair, you can do all that kind of thing, but isn't any damage to the hips, or is it getting harder as you get older are you getting less flexible, I guess is what I'm saying?
I have noticed less flexibility, and some of my friends who were born without arms, one of them was only 30 when she had to have a hip replacement, and another friend who was only 30 and she had a knee replacement. So we are experiencing a lot of overuse from having to use our legs and hips in the way that most people don't. I have to be mindful of that and definitely do things to help preserve that, because I'm not going to stay this flexible forever. I mean, I've known of someone in their 70s who can still touch their head with their foot because they, are so used to using their legs and feet. But there's also arthritis and all these other factors that aging can have. And when you rely on your legs like people without arms do, it's just another thing to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. And are your feet? I'm sorry, I'm asking these are just very curious questions. But can you walk on like hot pavement and not bother you? Can you walk on extreme cold and it not bother you? I mean, are your feet that tough now to You know what I'm saying?
They're pretty tough. They have they do have calluses that are stronger, and so but I'm still sensitive. I could still, like, I just had a splinter yesterday stick me in the toe, and I was like, because it was like, I felt like I was hypersensitive because I'm so using my toes that is almost an elevated sensation with my feet and toes than the average. So, but in other ways, they're pretty tough.
Yeah, I would imagine. I remember I was a lifeguard. For one summer, I didn't wear I was barefoot all the time, and I could walk at the end of the summer, I could walk on a hot asphalt to my car barefoot. It didn't bother me, but I don't know. I can't even walk on rocks right now.
Right, exactly.
Like, oh my God. Right.
Or on the grass.
We're on the grass. But yeah. Oh, and then putting the contacts in, that was the thing that how long did it take you to learn that skill?
So I started wearing glasses when I was probably 8. And then I thought, when you're in middle school, you picked on for glasses, at least then. When I was in middle school, you did. So I wanted to wear contacts right away. And I remember sitting there next to the doctor who was examining my eyes and everything. And he brings his assistant out, and she brings this whole box full of contact lenses. And she says to me, "We have this entire box of lenses. Take whatever you need. If you have to use every single one of them in here, go ahead. Do whatever it takes. We have all the time in the world here to learn how to put these contacts in." And I actually put them in on my first set of contacts.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh.
Because of it was just a matter of keeping your eye, it's the fear of touching your eye, whether you're touching your eye with your finger or your toes. It's that fear you have to get over and not, close your eye when you're bringing the contact up to your eye. So I just remember working on it and eventually getting those contacts in.
Amazing.
And I'm just always inspired by people who, go through adversity and inspire others because of that versus, and we talk about it a lot, but it's like, a person, it's the same, two different people could come up to the same path and they could take the same road, but have different experiences. And one ends up like alcoholic and their life falls apart. And the other ends up like you, where you're inspiring the world. So you've got the documentary, you've got a book called Disarm Your Limits, but what drives you now? I mean, what do you're giving so much back to the world. So I guess what message would you want to leave people with, or to leave people in general, through what you're doing? I guess what's ultimately it's inspiring on so many levels, but what's your heart kind of leaning into, I guess, in the world right now?
I think I like to leave interpretation to the individual, because some people take their own message of either perseverance or authenticity, the importance of celebrating the individual. And for me, I think I like to say that my message is one of achieving the impossible, of celebrating the uniqueness that I was blessed with, and being the best I can, best version of myself, because, not everyone's perfect and not every day is going to be perfect, but all you can do is be the best version of yourself and put yourself out there. And people, will take their message away that they need in the moment. Right now, a lot of people need a resilience message, and of getting back out there and getting up and doing things and setting goals and staying positive. And that's very important for people. And it'll continue to push me to do my job every single day as a motivational speaker. Right now, I'm doing a lot of virtual presentations. In a couple days, on December 3rd, we celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And that is a pretty important day around the world to bring light to how we can continue to grow and be more inclusive as a society. We still have the challenge here in the United States of employment for people with disabilities, and I'll continue to work on that and pushing for that and making a change in that. And of course, internationally, the stigma that still exists about disability.
Amazing.
It is amazing.
Amazing stuff. And as I look at everything you've done and just the way you're showing up in the world, and obviously you inspired me to want to have you on the show. You've inspired Richard. Now he's watched your diet. So it's it's working. What you're putting out in the world, I guess I would say, is working. And two, I want to make sure that I don't lose sight of the fact that, had you not been born with the gift of not having arms, and that may sound strange, but if you had not been born with that gift, you might not have had the impact in the world or the ability for people to hear the true message that's there. Because for me, the message isn't that you were born without arms. For me, the message is more of that you're using your life to help and inspire others to live their best life.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, whether you have arms or not, that's immaterial to me at this point. It's amazing what you've done, but really it's more amazing that you're just continuing to use your life to pay it forward when you could have said, I don't have arms, so I'm not able to do this, or and I think for people that are born with all of their limbs intact, it's easy to make excuses, but then somebody comes along like you and says, no, you got to think differently. You got to, you're a light that we can aspire to look at and say, if she can think differently, I can think differently, right? And if she can accomplish these things, maybe I have the chance to get a better job or be in a better relationship or whatever that next thing is. It's not that you have to go learn to be a pilot or you learn to be a black belt. It's not that you have to go conquer the world, but at least, have ownership and respect for yourself and do good for yourself and do good for others, right?
Yeah, Jessica, and I think that if I can piggyback on what Matt's saying is like, and I know this, that part of your purpose is raising awareness, like you said, and doing all these things. But I think you impact more than just the space around the disability sphere.
That's exactly where I was headed.
Does that make sense? I mean, you're not. Yeah, you can certainly make a huge impact on there, and you have. Yeah. But I think you're making an equal, if not even more impact with average Joes like me and Matt. You know what I mean? I mean, the fact that you can just look at things a little bit differently, and we don't have to be constrained to these kind of conforming ideas, just going back to your example of the prosthetics, right? I mean, that is a huge message for someone like me and Matt, or at least was for me. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, why are we limiting ourselves? And you see that in a lot of parents who have kids that are born with disabilities, who do it right. Like Nick, what's his name? Jessica, Nick Wojcik, right? Same thing. He had parents kind of like your parents, where, he tells the story of like, hey, the cookies are on the shelf, and the kid wants a cookie, and the dad said, well, you better figure out how to get them if you want them, know. And Nick figured out how to get the step stool, get up there, and get the cookies himself, right? And that's a gift. And your parents were kind of the same way.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because I think I am so fortunate to have had the parents I had, and that they were an example to me that I'm not a victim of anything, and that I could just overcome it and just not give up.
Yeah, I think you're doing amazing stuff.
I do too. I'm so happy we were able to have you on the show today, and it was more than what I could have hoped for in the conversation. So thank you, and I hope obviously Richard's passionate today. I got passionate today. I just appreciate, what you're doing out there, and it's very real and very authentic, and it's just cool to be able to spend this time with you today.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it.
How can people reach out to you? I mean, you're easy to find, and you got a treasure trove of stuff. But how do you want people to reach out to you and connect with you?
Oh, you can find me on social media, Jessica Cox, or my website, jessicacox.com. You can find out more about my book if you want a copy of Disarm Your Limits. It's on Amazon. Or you can go and watch the documentary that was referenced today a lot called Right Footed. It's on Amazon Prime. I think it's $4 to rent, and you can watch that, share that with a family, especially right now when families are getting together. It's a great, encouraging documentary done by Nick Spark. So there are wonderful ways which you could stay connected, and I love to connect through my social media, kind of update people on what I'm up to and my next goals, and follow me on the airplane project called Project 2025. If you want to be a part of that, we appreciate it. If you want to help with ideas, if you want to help us make this airplane a reality in the next couple of years, please stay engaged with us there on social media and stay in touch. Yeah, thank you.
Jessica, thanks for coming on the show. Real pleasure, and we hope we can stay in touch. And hopefully this is the beginning of staying in touch with Matt and myself.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Next Level Method podcast. If you found some value in this, tell somebody about the show. Tell your friends, tell your spouse, tell your kids, let them know all about Next Level Method. And go to nextlevelmethod.com to learn more and join our community. Thanks for tuning in.